This isn't a story about time travel. It's about a boy, a gadget, and a series of seemingly impossible events. It's about secrets, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. It's about a journey, not through time, but through the very fabric of reality. It's about the power of belief and the courage to face the unknown. Our story begins with Ethan, a curious and adventurous 12-year-old. Ethan lived in a small town where life moved at a predictable pace. He spent his days exploring the woods behind his house, dreaming of faraway lands and fantastical creatures. He yearned for adventure, for something more than the ordinary routine of his daily life. One rainy afternoon, rummaging through his attic, Ethan stumbled upon a peculiar object. It was a small metallic device, shaped like a compass, with intricate engravings and a glowing crystal at its center. The moment he touched it, a surge of energy pulsed through his body, and the attic seemed to shimmer and distort around him. This was no ordinary compass. It was a gateway, a key to worlds unseen. Ethan's heart pounded with excitement. He knew instinctively that this gadget held the key to the adventures he craved. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever, leading him to hidden realms, magical creatures, and a destiny he could never have imagined. His world was about to get a whole lot bigger. The attic, once a familiar space, now pulsed with an eerie energy. The air crackled around the gadget, and the shadows danced in a way that made Ethan uneasy. He held the compass-like device tightly, its smooth metal surface cold against his palm. It felt strangely alive, buzzing with a hidden power. He knew he had to understand it, to unlock its secrets. The gadget hummed softly, its crystal glowing brighter with each passing moment. Ethan noticed a faint pattern etched onto its surface, a series of lines and symbols that seemed to shift and change. Suddenly, a section of the attic wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a hidden doorway. Ethan gasped, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind the shimmering veil lay a room, dark and mysterious. He took a deep breath, clutched the gadget tightly, and stepped through the doorway. The hidden room was dimly lit, filled with strange and wonderful objects. Ancient scrolls lay scattered on a dusty table, their pages filled with cryptic symbols. And on the far wall, a massive map shimmered with an ethereal light, depicting lands both familiar and utterly alien. Ethan realized that this was no ordinary room. It was a repository of secrets, a gateway to a world beyond his wildest dreams. The map on the wall pulsed with a soft, ethereal light. As Ethan approached, he realized it wasn't just a map. It was a living portal. The lands depicted on its surface weren't static images. They were windows into other realms. He could see forests teeming with strange creatures, mountains that pierced the clouds, and cities that glittered with an otherworldly light. Ethan reached out and touched the map, his fingertips sinking into its surface as if it were made of liquid light. A jolt of energy surged through him, and the room around him dissolved into a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. He was no longer in the attic. He was hurtling through a tunnel of pure energy, the map's destinations swirling around him like a kaleidoscope. He felt a sense of exhilaration mixed with terror, a feeling of being unmoored from reality. When the swirling colors finally subsided, Ethan found himself standing in a forest unlike any he had ever seen. The trees were impossibly tall, their leaves shimmering with iridescent colors. Strange flowers bloomed in profusion, their petals emitting a soft, pulsating light. The air was filled with the sound of birdsong, but the melodies were unlike anything he had ever heard. Ethan took a tentative step forward, his senses overwhelmed by the sights and sounds of this alien world. The ground beneath his feet was soft and springy, covered in a carpet of moss that glowed with a faint phosphorescent light. He felt a sense of wonder mixed with trepidation. He had stepped through the gateway and into a realm of pure enchantment. The forest teemed with life, but it was a life unlike anything Ethan had ever encountered. Colourful birds with iridescent feathers flitted through the trees, their calls a symphony of exotic melodies. Small, furry creatures with glowing eyes peered at him from behind the undergrowth, their movements quick and silent. Giant insects with shimmering wings buzzed through the air, their bodies pulsing with bioluminescent light. This was a world where nature had run wild, where evolution had taken a different course, resulting in creatures both beautiful and bizarre. As Ethan ventured deeper into the forest, He noticed that the trees themselves seemed to be alive. Their branches swayed and danced, as if in response to some unseen rhythm. Their leaves rustled and whispered, carrying on conversations in a language he couldn't understand. He felt a strange connection to these trees, a sense that they were aware of his presence and were watching him with ancient, knowing eyes. He was an outsider in this realm, a visitor from a world where nature had been tamed and subdued. The deeper Ethan ventured into the forest, the more surreal his surroundings became. The trees grew taller and more gnarled, their branches intertwining to form a canopy so dense that it blocked out the sky. The air grew thick with the scent of exotic flowers and the musky odor of unseen creatures. Strange sounds echoed through the woods, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of insects, the distant calls of unknown animals. It was a symphony of sounds, both beautiful and unsettling, that created an atmosphere of mystery and enchantment. Ethan felt a growing sense of unease. He was surrounded by wonders, but he was also acutely aware of his own vulnerability. He was alone in this strange world, with no idea where he was going or what dangers might lie ahead. He gripped the Gateway Gadget tightly, its smooth metal surface cold against his palm. It was his only connection to his own world, his only hope of finding his way back home. Section 5. The Talking Creatures. The forest was alive with the murmur of unseen creatures. Rustling leaves, snapping twigs, and the chirping of insects filled the air. Ethan felt a prickle of unease. He was being watched. He could sense eyes upon him, hidden in the dense undergrowth, tracking his every move. He quickened his pace, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he wasn't alone in this enchanted realm. Suddenly, a voice, clear as a bell, cut through the forest sounds. "Well, well, well! What have we here?" Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes darting around, searching for the source of the voice. A small, furry creature emerged from behind a cluster of ferns, its large eyes glowing with an eerie light. It stood on its hind legs, its tiny paws clasped behind its back, its expression both amused and inquisitive. "Who are you?" Ethan stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The creature chuckled, a high-pitched sound that echoed through the forest. "I am Finley," it replied, its voice surprisingly deep and resonant. "And you, young traveller, are clearly not from around these parts." Finley tilted his head, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Lost your way, have you?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to trust this strange creature. But Finley's demeanour was disarmingly friendly, and Ethan was desperate for any guidance in this unfamiliar world. "Yes," he admitted, "I'm lost. I don't know how I got here, or how to get back." Finley smiled, revealing a set of surprisingly sharp teeth. "Ah, a classic case of accidental portal hopping," he said, as if it were an everyday occurrence. "Don't worry, young traveller, you've come to the right place. We know a thing or two about lost souls in these parts." Section 6. The Ancient Prophecy. Finley, the talking creature, led Ethan deeper into the enchanted forest. As they walked, Finley shared tales of the forest's magic and its ancient history. He spoke of a time when the forest was a place of great power, ruled by wise beings who guarded nature's balance. But that time had long since passed, and the forest was now a shadow of its former glory. "There is an ancient prophecy," Finley explained, "that speaks of a traveller from another world bearing a device of great power." He paused, his eyes fixed on Ethan, his expression serious. "This traveller, the prophecy says, will hold the fate of the forest in his hands. He will either restore its magic or hasten its demise." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. He had stumbled into something much bigger than himself. This wasn't just a random adventure. It was a destiny he was meant to fulfill. He clutched the Gateway Gadget tightly, its crystal pulsing with a warm, reassuring light. He didn't understand the prophecy, but he knew he couldn't ignore it. He had a role to play in this story, whether he wanted to or not. Finley led Ethan to a hidden glade where a group of creatures had gathered. They were a motley crew, furry creatures, winged beings, and creatures that seemed to be made of pure light. They stared at Ethan with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. He sensed that they knew about the prophecy, that they had been waiting for his arrival. He felt a weight settle upon his shoulders, a responsibility he hadn't asked for but couldn't escape. The fate of the forest, and perhaps his own, rested on his next move. Section 7. The Secret Society. Ethan stood in the hidden glade, surrounded by the creatures of the enchanted forest. He felt a mixture of awe and trepidation. These beings were unlike anything he had ever encountered, yet they seemed to accept him as one of their own. Finley, the ever-present guide, introduced Ethan to the assembled creatures. They were members of a secret society, dedicated to protecting the forest and its magic. They had been watching Ethan's journey, guided by the ancient prophecy. They believed that Ethan, with his Gateway Gadget, held the key to restoring the forest's lost power. The forest's magic had been fading for centuries, drained by a dark force. They needed Ethan's help to defeat the darkness and restore nature's balance. Ethan listened intently, struggling to grasp the immensity of the situation. He was just an ordinary boy, thrust into an extraordinary adventure. He had a responsibility to help, to use the Gateway Gadget for good. Among the creatures gathered in the glade was one who stood out from the rest. He was taller and more imposing than the others, his eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed to span centuries. His name was Eldrick, and he was the guardian of the forest, the last of his kind. He approached Ethan, his gaze steady and unwavering. "The path ahead is fraught with danger," Eldrick warned, his voice deep and resonant. "The dark force you seek to confront is ancient and powerful. It will stop at nothing to claim this realm as its own." Eldrick placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "You must be brave, young traveller. You must believe in yourself and in the power of the Gateway Gadget." Eldrick explained that the dark force resided in a lost city, hidden deep within the forest. It was a place of shadows and despair, where the forest's magic had been corrupted and twisted. To defeat the darkness, Ethan would have to journey to the lost city and confront the source of its power. He knew he couldn't back down. He had come too far, and the fate of the forest rested on his shoulders. "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "I'll do whatever it takes to defeat the darkness and restore the forest's magic." Guided by Eldrick and the creatures of the secret society, Ethan embarked on a perilous journey to the lost city. They travelled through dense forests, across treacherous mountains, and through hidden caverns, their path illuminated by the glowing crystals of the Gateway Gadget. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the darkness, and the atmosphere grew heavier with every passing moment. The creatures shared tales of the lost city, whispering of its corrupted magic and sinister inhabitants. As they approached the lost city, the forest around them changed. The trees became withered and gnarled, their branches reaching out like skeletal claws. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, and a heavy silence hung over the land. Ethan felt a growing sense of dread. The lost city was a place of nightmares, a physical manifestation of the darkness he had been sent to confront. He gripped the Gateway Gadget tightly, its crystal pulsing with a warm, reassuring light. He knew he was walking into the lion's den, but he was determined to see his mission through. The lost city loomed before them, a decaying monument to a forgotten era. Crumbling towers pierced the sky, their surfaces covered in strange, pulsating growths. Twisted streets wound through the city's heart, choked with debris and shrouded in an unnatural gloom. The air crackled with a sinister energy, and the silence was broken only by the whisper of the wind. Ethan and his companions moved cautiously through the city, their senses on high alert. They were servants of the darkness, their minds and bodies corrupted by its power. Each encounter tested Ethan's courage, pushing him to the edge of his endurance. Deep within the heart of the city, in a chamber of obsidian and shadow, Ethan finally confronted the source of the darkness. It was a being of immense power, its form shifting and swirling, its voice a chorus of whispers and screams. He felt the weight of the Gateway Gadget in his hand, its crystal pulsing with a defiant light. He knew that the fate of the forest, and perhaps his own, rested on his next move. He had to find a way to defeat the darkness, to restore the balance of nature, to fulfill the ancient prophecy. Ethan stood before the embodiment of darkness, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He knew he couldn't defeat this creature with brute force. It was far too powerful, its magic fueled by centuries of corrupted energy. He had to find another way, a way to outsmart the darkness, to exploit its weaknesses. Ethan remembered Eldrick's words. "You must believe in yourself and in the power of the Gateway Gadget." He realized that the key to defeating the darkness lay not in the gadget itself, but in the belief it inspired. The Gateway Gadget was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a possibility of change. Ethan closed his eyes, focusing his mind on the Gateway Gadget. He envisioned the forest's lost magic, its vibrant energy, the interconnectedness of all living things. He poured his belief, his hope, his love for the forest into the gadget, its crystal glowing brighter with each passing moment. He felt a surge of power coursing through him, a power that came not from the gadget itself, but from the belief it inspired. Ethan opened his eyes and directed the Gateway Gadget's energy towards the embodiment of darkness. The creature recoiled, its form flickering and distorting, its power waning in the face of Ethan's unwavering belief. The chamber filled with a blinding light as the Gateway Gadget's energy clashed with the darkness, creating a vortex of conflicting forces. The light faded, and the chamber fell silent. The embodiment of darkness was gone, its power dissipated, its reign over the lost city broken. Ethan stood amidst the ruins, the Gateway Gadget warm in his hand, its crystal glowing with a soft, reassuring light. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, fulfilling the ancient prophecy and restoring the balance of nature. The creatures of the secret society emerged from the shadows, their faces filled with relief and gratitude. They thanked Ethan for his courage, his belief, his willingness to embrace a destiny he never sought. They celebrated his victory, their voices echoing through the ruins of the lost city, a symphony of joy and renewal. Ethan knew it was time to return home. He had accomplished what he had set out to do, and the forest was safe once more. He stepped through a shimmering portal, the Gateway Gadget guiding his way, and found himself back in the familiar surroundings of his attic. Ethan looked around the attic, its ordinary objects now imbued with a sense of wonder. He had journeyed to a magical realm, faced unimaginable dangers, and returned a changed person. He carried the memory of his adventures in his heart, a reminder that the world was full of mysteries, and that even the most ordinary life could be touched by magic.